Alexander the Great. Hi everyone. Alexander the Great is one of the most famous names in history, and his legacy continues to capture people's imagination today. His story is one that has been romanticized over the centuries, with many tales and legends growing around him since his death. But who really was Alexander the Great? This is the biography of Alexander the Great, one of the greatest conquerors in history. Early life and family origins. Alexander the Great was born in Pella, the capital of the ancient kingdom of Macedon, in 356 BCE. While Macedon was technically a part of ancient Greece, it was considered somewhat of an outsider by the other Greek city-states because of its location in the north. It was also not a particularly wealthy or powerful state. When Alexander was born, his father, King Philip II, ruled over a kingdom that was still trying to throw off the yoke of its many enemies. The young Alexander would have grown up surrounded by tales of his father's victories, though, as Philip gradually conquered more and more of Greece and forged the various city-states into a league under Macedonian domination. By the time he died in 336 BC, he had created a real powerhouse of a state that could rival the Persian Empire. Much of what we know about Alexander's early life comes from accounts written by his own historians, Arrian and Plutarch, who both wrote several centuries after Alexander's death. Both of these men were very much admirers of their subject, and so the stories they tell paint an extremely favorable picture of Alexander. According to Plutarch, when he was just 2 years old, his nurse prophesied that he was destined for greatness, telling his mother Olympias that he was meant to rule over many more kings than he himself would have kings over him. We don't know if this was actually said, but it is a good summation of Alexander's legacy. After the death of his father, Alexander took the throne at the age of 20, probably with the help of his mother, who was regent during his minority. He quickly set about stamping his authority on the kingdom. One of his first acts was to execute the man who had assassinated his father, and he also spent time touring the kingdom, visiting cities and meeting local rulers, thus forging alliances and getting support for his rule. Conquest of the Persian Empire. As we've already mentioned, when Alexander came to power, the kingdom of Macedon dominated the Greek world. To the east of Macedon, though, across the Hellespont, lay the vast Persian Empire. Although the Persians had been decisively defeated by the Greeks at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE, they never stopped being a threat. Philip had even gone on campaign against them before his death, taking his army as far as the river Granicus. So it was hardly surprising that Alexander, with his dreams of empire, should decide to continue his father's work and conquer the Persians. He began his campaigns in 334 BCE with an invasion across the Hellespont into Anatolia. Here, he smashed the numerically superior Persian army at the battles of the Granicus River and the river Tigris. After defeating the Persians, he turned around and went back to Macedon to deal with some rebellions. When he returned to Anatolia in 333 BCE, his task was to defeat the great satrap, Orontes, who had taken advantage of Alexander's absence to raise a large army. Again, despite being outnumbered, Alexander won a brilliant victory at the Battle of Issus, where he even captured the personal effects of Darius, including his family's gold treasure. Darius fled to Susa in Persia proper, but was eventually forced to flee eastwards into Central Asia. Alexander pursued him all the way to the Indus River, where he finally made camp for the winter of 332 BCE. During his campaign, he had already made himself hugely popular in the cities of Western and Central Asia Minor, which now became his most loyal supporters. He founded the city of Alexandria on the Egyptian coast in 331 BCE, named in his honor and intended to be a new capital for his empire. In 331, Alexander crossed into Egypt and was greeted as a liberator. There was no resistance, and the Egyptians willingly accepted him as pharaoh. He then went north to finish off the remnants of the Persian army once and for all. In 330 BCE, he utterly defeated Darius's son, Bessus, at the Battle of Gaugamela. which resulted in the total collapse of the Achaemenid Empire. Persia was now completely at the mercy of Alexander. During the following years, he spent much of his time putting down rebellions in the satrapies of Persia, although he didn't live to complete this task. He did, however, found yet another city named after him near the end of his life, this time at the mouth of the River Nile. The city of Alexandria was destined to become one of the greatest cities in the ancient world. Later, life and death. While Alexander was successful in his campaigns in the east, things weren't going quite as well back home. His generals were finding it difficult to keep control of the kingdom, and his wife Roxana, who had borne him a son, gave him cause for concern. She came from a Sogdian noble family in Central Asia, and her brother was killed at the siege of the rebel city of Taba in 328 BCE. Alexander, who may have suspected Roxana of playing a part in the rebellion, decided to take her back to Macedon with him to ensure her obedience. As they traveled east, though, his health began to deteriorate. He had already suffered bouts of fever and other illnesses during his campaigns, and according to Plutarch, he was now in constant pain and agony. Despite this, he pressed on and reached the Indian Ocean in 325 BCE, where he once again founded a city, this time named Bucephala, in honor of his favorite horse. Having achieved this goal, Alexander finally turned around and headed back towards the west. The journey was long and arduous, and Alexander's health continued to worsen. He died at the age of 32 on June 10, 323 BCE, in the city of Babylon. Although there are conflicting accounts of how he died, with some suggesting that he was poisoned, most historians agree that it was simply a combination of exhaustion and illness that brought him down. Alexander's empire didn't last long after his death. Within just 2 years, it had been divided amongst his generals, who became known as the Diadochi, or successors. None of Alexander's heirs inherited his ability as a military commander and a statesman, and within a century, the kingdoms founded by his father and himself were little more than a memory. Legacy. It is hard to overstate Alexander's impact on the ancient world. His campaigns spread Greek culture and ideas over a vast area of the Middle East and Central Asia, which is why he is often referred to as Alexander the Great. He is remembered as the quintessential warrior king, a great general and strategist who led his armies to victory in virtually every battle he fought. His campaigns are studied by military leaders even today, and he remains an inspiration to many. His empire was short-lived, but its effects were long-lasting. Many of the cities he founded, especially Alexandria in Egypt, became centers of trade and culture, and his conquests paved the way for the rise of the Hellenistic kingdoms, which ushered in a new era of cultural exchange between the East and the West. Without Alexander, the course of history would have been very different. Thank you for watching.